Mike Salguero, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's funny. I thought I was bringing you on for kind of half of my journey because I'm on this one half journey about how to build different and be a lot more present with family and stuff like that. And then the other half is how AI will transform how startups get built and funded, and how a middle-aged founder like me that wants to be a lot more present can leverage those tools to help enable it. And I thought I was only talking about the first part, although you told me right before recording that you're about to do some stuff with AI too. I know nothing. I asked you nothing, so we'll do it live. But that was a surprise, actually, since you have I was going to say a meat company, but how do you describe it?
Yeah, we are a meat company. We ship raised animals or well-raised meat in the mail. But ultimately, we're a customer service company. And so the application of AI for us is a lot around happiness of our customers. How can we make them more happy? What types of deals and offers are they looking for? At what time? If you think about our product, so we ship you on a monthly basis a box of meat in the mail. And that meat is frozen. And if you imagine your average customer is getting that product, putting it in their freezer, and then forgetting about it. Because most Americans, when they think about what's for dinner, they open their refrigerator. So anything that we can do to inspire our members to cook more often, which we see as a really good thing. It's a good thing for your health. It's a good thing for your children's health. It's good for the environment. We think eating around a table is a good thing. So eating at home, we're pro eating at home. So anything that we can do to inspire that is something that I think that AI/experientially, how can we drive that?
So you are not pro eating in a car on top of your school iPad while you're trying to get your homework done and eat dinner on the way to sports practice?
No. Yeah. Hopefully you guys find at least like one meal a week where you can sit around a table and enjoy. There's a Spanish saying called sobremesa, which is like sitting around the table, which I think is a lost art because we, as parents, overschedule our kids, run around with them, think we're like helping. Unclear whether we are. I guess the jury's still out on that one.
We've been talking a little about this offline, so it'll be interesting to see how much of that ends up coming up in this discussion.
Yeah. I guess it really depends on the motivation, right? If your kid is, this is what I want to do, then okay, great. But otherwise, is it you or is it your kid? Which, by the way, is like my whole philosophy on running a company. So I started ButcherBox about 10 years ago, and I started it. I had run something else for 8 years that didn't work out, and I felt like I lost my soul running the company. And I started ButcherBox.
And I met you when you were running that.
Yeah, when I was soulless running around. I started ButcherBox and also had a 4-month-old at home. And the thing that I found to be like so interesting is I think businesses and kids are like it's very similar. The way I run my business is very much the way I raise my family, which is keep them safe. In the case of business, that's don't run out of money. Build some guardrails. So in the case of business, that's core values. You try to teach your values to your kids. And then they're going to be what they want to be. And I think that is one of the things that I upon a lot of reflection of the first company I ran, I was like in misalignment with what the company wanted to be. The company wanted to be something different than what I wanted it to be. And ButcherBox, I really tried to, it sounds cool, but I tried to listen in to what does the company want to be? And it turned out that the company wanted to be something much bigger than I had expected. I built this as a hobby business. I was like your podcast, trying to figure out like, hey, maybe I could run something with everything's outsourced and it's just me and 1 or 2 people, and that would be so great. It'd be like a hobby. And that was the whole idea of ButcherBox. And then it became pretty clear that ButcherBox wanted to be something bigger. But I kept that philosophy throughout. And I equate it to like Simone Biles' parents. I just have this picture of Simone Biles, who's the famous gymnast. She's 2 years old, 3 years old, and doing backflips in the living room. Her parents are like, I guess we're going to get her into gymnastics.
Is that the story?
I have no idea if that's the story. I'm sure but you can't push somebody like you. Maybe I'm wrong. These talents are generally born and then fostered. And so we did a lot of fostering with ButcherBox, but it really wanted to be something bigger than what I had anticipated. And I think the same with kids. Like the kids are just they're going to be who they're going to be. I can only do so much.
Oh, gosh, I have so many questions. So
Great.
It's going to be a challenge to figure out where to start here. But I know where I think I want to start, which is let's go back to CustomMade. You didn't name it, but CustomMade was your first company where you were running around soulless. And you mentioned that one of the reasons you think, with the benefit of hindsight, that it didn't work is that the company wanted to be something different than what you wanted to be. But you were the founder. Maybe talk a bit about how that bifurcation occurred. And I'd also be interested to understand, with the benefit of hindsight, how much you think that raising gobs of venture capital was the reason versus just a contributor versus a non-factor at all. Yeah.
So I think there was like three core components of CustomMade that really changed my experience. One, I had a co-founder. So it wasn't me as I'm the founder. It was me with a very vocal best friend co-founder who we fought about everything. So I had to change my perspective a lot. The second was, yes, we had gobs of venture capital. We raised about $30 million of financing, and those venture capitalists have a point of view, and you have to take in their point of view. And the third was, I was young. I was 26 when I started CustomMade and had never done it before, and very impressionable. So when somebody comes to your office and they have all this experience and they represent all this money and they've done big things in the world, and they're like, that experience sucks, or that person stinks, or like, you need to do this, or you need to do that. As a 26-year-old, I listened. I didn't have enough like mental fortitude to be like, yeah, you're wrong, and here are all the reasons why. Unlike you in your first venture where things seem to work out really well, at least outwardly.
No. One of the reasons why I was all screwed up after the exit is that we were in like carbon monoxide wartime for several years, and then had to do a bunch of hard things to save the company, and then got healthy and got almost profitable, and then ended up landing the plane and having a pretty good outcome. But after that, everyone was like saying what you just said, and I didn't feel worthy at all. I felt like a complete imposter that just didn't deserve to be sitting in the seat I was sitting in. And it was like, what am I going to do now? And I had to do a long walkabout to sort through all that, because I did not feel pride when we landed the plane. I felt like guilt.
That is a common reaction to selling a company, I have found. I have not experienced it myself, but in talking with a lot of friends, there's like this empty feeling at the end of the rainbow.
It was life-changing. It completely stabilized the future of my family, which is insane. And I care way more about that than I do about stuff.
Yeah.
Flexibility to pursue things for love versus pursuing things for cash, but I felt incredibly fortunate. But again, I also didn't feel. I think over time, I have come to realize that, like you, I was young, I was a first timer, I made a bunch of mistakes, and sure, if I had a do-over, I would have done a lot of things different. But like, you can't. That's not how life works. And I did the best I could with what I had. And most people would have quit like a million times over, and I didn't quit. So I'm actually in that way, I'm proud that I landed the plane in the end.
Yeah,
it took a lot of grit.
That is the mark of a great entrepreneur, the not quitting piece. I oftentimes find people ask me like, oh, how'd you raise money? Like, I've gone on 10 meetings, and I'm like, yeah, I went on 70 meetings to raise money.
But I want to talk, so you talked about some of the factors that led to the misalignment and to ultimately the company didn't make it. But talk a bit about how that felt at the time, and how long of a walkabout was there in between, and then how ButcherBox came about. And I have a whole nother set of questions, which is that you didn't raise a dime of outside capital, and you're like my entrepreneurial hero for that. And you can do it different, and 4-day work week, and be present with your 3 girls and all that, right? Or 4 girls if you count your wife, right? But then what I want to know is, okay, now you're like north of 500 million in revenue. Doesn't your life suck just like it does for every CEO running a big company? Or are you still quote unquote doing it different? But we can get to that a little later.
Okay, so yeah, we got to go quick here. Okay, essentially what happened at CustomMade is a lot of really amazing people helped me build the company. We raised outside capital from Google, First Round Capital, Schooner Capital, Atlas, which is now Accomplice. And we ended up being pressured to hire, quote unquote, better people. Those people came in, we hired for resume, not for core values, and they stomped on our core values a bit. We didn't have core values, but the culture of the company
the intuitive unspoken ones.
Yeah. And the culture of the company changed. We had to professionalize, which was probably what we needed to do.
Each other at 9 a.m. like we were doing at Runkeeper.
Yeah, exactly. We couldn't walk around barefoot, and that was hard. That was hard for me. Plus, the business wasn't working. So ultimately, we raised money ahead of product market fit, and our investors thought we had product market fit, but we didn't. And so we just started building on top of something that didn't exist, and it didn't work. It didn't work. And so on a Friday before Memorial Day weekend in 2015, I literally shut the gate of CustomMade, because it was like an old retail center was our office, and closed the padlock, and it was like, we're done. And on Tuesday,
was there like a director in the background that was like, and cut?
And cut, yeah. I was like, womp, womp. Yeah. And then on Tuesday, so I took the Memorial Day weekend off. Tuesday, I had an intern from Babson show up at my door at 9 a.m. who I had convinced to come work for me for $11 an hour, and he was going to work in the summer on this concept, which was going to be ButcherBox. So I didn't take any time off.
Wait, how long was that in the works?
So the last year at CustomMade, it was pretty clear CustomMade wasn't going to work. And so I had just started like thinking about what would be next, but hadn't really put all the pieces together. But I knew myself well enough to know, and this goes into doing things different. Like, I knew myself well enough to know that if it was just me, if I had to wake up on Tuesday morning and like, all right, I'm going to start working, that wouldn't work. Like, I just wouldn't be motivated. I get motivated by having groups of people around me, and we're all like working on something together, like common good. And I knew enough about myself to know that I needed someone to hold my hand over the summer. So when Bobby showed up at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday and he's like, all right, what are we doing? I was like, let's go to a coffee shop. It was like we had to start with find a desk to work at. And we spent the summer building.
Mike, did you have kids at this time or not yet?
I did. I had what was she, 9-month-old?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
and, as a young guy, first company created in the ground, were you feeling some financial pressure at that time?
I was fortunate to have done secondary, which is something I encourage all founders to do. So if you do go on the venture capital train around your Series B, if you can, you should cobble together a secondary round, which is basically some of the shares that you sell are your own. So we were able to do a secondary, and that was enough money.
Yeah, so you weren't rich, but you at least had some time.
Yeah, I had some time. And so I didn't feel a time pressure at all. And I thought, why don't I spend the summer trying to spin up this hobby? Because it was going to be a hobby. It'll cover my expenses, and then I'll have real freedom. I can go do whatever I want.
How'd you pick this hobby?
So I had three concepts that I was incubating at the time. And so it chose me, although that's like pretty cliche to say. But one of the things that I tell founders who are trying to think about doing things different or starting a new company is to start with your lifestyle plan. So you start with, what kind of lifestyle do you want? Oh, I want to work out every day. I don't want to go to an office. I don't want to have a lot of people reporting to me. And I want to sell a physical product.
You are speaking my language right now.
Like
it isn't that set of stuff, but I have some pretty big constraints on the personal side, which is confusing me because I'm still a really super ambitious entrepreneur, but I have just a lot more constraints than I'm used to having. So.
Yeah. So I encourage people to like go take a walk in nature, or go do whatever it takes to like be able to listen to your heart. And then write that down. What does a day in the life look like of Jason 3 years in the future? What are you doing? Who are you talking to? What's your day look like? Are you there for breakfast? Are you there for dinner? Are you running around for sports? What's your day look like? And write it down. And it's like, okay, how does the business that I'm about to start, or I'm going to incubate, or I'm going to do, how does it fit into that lifestyle plan? Because ultimately what we're looking for in life, I think, is an amazing lifestyle. And then your business should feed that. Unless you're like going to go change the world, which, let's be honest, most of us are not. It's what's important to you, and then try to build a business that helps drive that importance. That's like very backwards to what most people do. What most people do is they start with a business plan, and they build like a 15-page business plan with all the financials and how are we going to do this and what's going to happen. And the challenge with that is you build the business plan, then you build a pitch deck, then you go and try to pitch investors, then try to get some money, try to get product market fit, and you build and build and build. And you never ask the question of, do I want this? Like, is this what I want? And by the time you pick up your head 8 years later, you're running this business that you're like, shit, like this sucks. I don't like any of the people. I don't like the problem space. I don't like the customers. My first business, CustomMade, I didn't really like the makers, and I didn't really like the customers. It wasn't like a passion project for me. My friend and I just wanted to start a company. And if you're not focused on what is my lifestyle, what do I want, what types of interactions do I want, etc., it can really backfire. So when I had decided what I wanted out of my lifestyle, which had a lot to do with spend time with my kids and be present and travel and do all these other things, I had 3 ideas that I was running with. One was a billboard company, one was a bond company, and the last one was ButcherBox. And what I would try to do on a weekly basis, and this was while CustomMade was falling apart, my co-founder took over as CEO, and so there wasn't much to do except for watch the thing smack into a wall. And so every week I'd just try to progress these ideas a little bit further. What's one thing that you can do this week to see if the bond company has any legs? I still think that bond company is fascinating. I'd love for somebody to do it. And then it's, actually that won't work. And that's okay. So with ButcherBox, the big challenge was, how do you ship meat in the mail? Couldn't figure it out. I was like, this business will work. There's definite market need. I got into it because my wife and I were trying to like eat better and we couldn't find grass-fed beef. Like there's definite market need. There's no one doing this well. I think we can do subscription. But it was like, how do you ship a box of meat in the mail? And one week I reached out to a guy who ran Omaha Steaks, or he ran operations for Omaha Steaks, and he made some introductions, and voila, it all started to work. And so that happened as I was leaving CustomMade, and that was like, okay, let's see if we can make this work. So intern comes in, and we get going, and the idea was, I'm going to put $10,000 into this, legal fees, intern, everything. We're going to launch a Kickstarter to see if there's any sort of signal here. Do customers actually want this? And we'll see. And so we worked this summer, got a Kickstarter up and running. We launched a Kickstarter in September, and it just took off. We tried to raise $25,000. We raised $215,000. And we had some stuff, like we expected to do better than 25, but not 215. And things just went from there. And we grew very quickly. And despite many meetings and conversations and questioning, we have decided not to raise money because I don't want to serve that master right now. It just doesn't feel like it's the right time, or I'm not sure there will ever be a good time.
Me neither.
Yeah, it's just... I think there's a lot of really intriguing large companies that are changing the world in whatever way they are that have not raised money, and those founders just seem a lot happier. And so it's like, why not do that?
It'd be helpful, if you're willing, to maybe if you had to chunk the ButcherBox story into chapters or seasons, what are the different seasons that the company's gone through? And similarly, to the extent that you're comfortable, I'd love to understand just the family seasons and how those have interacted along the way.
Yeah.
It's also just selfishly, that's something I'm struggling with.
We launched in 2015, in September of 2015, and Kickstarter went really well. The next year, we had a tiny office and just started growing. And so the Kickstarter year, we did about 300,000 in sales. The next year, we did 5 million. The next year, 35. The next year, 105. So
wow.
We grew very quickly. And then 105, 225, and then COVID hit. We went to 450, and then I can talk about the rest. The company, we had a group of pirates, people who had a massive chip on their shoulder, a lot of people who had failed at a venture or just had something to prove and did not have any pedigree. And I felt the same way.
That's a great profile.
Yeah.
And I felt that way my whole life.
Yeah, I felt the same way about myself. I just failed in this company. I was like, I'm not doing venture again. I remember one of my investors.
Even in sports, I was a little 5'7", 5'8" Jewish hockey player.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the equivalent of no pedigree.
Yeah, grit. And you build this I don't care. I'm going to make this work. You're not going to stop me. And we had a whole crew of those people. And I decided actually at the very beginning that part of my lifestyle plan was I'm not going to work on Fridays. I'm going to basically be with my daughter on Friday. Because at the time, my wife was working Monday through Thursday. She was working on Fridays. I forget what her schedule was, but she was working on Fridays. And I was like, I'm going to stay home. I know it'll be a challenge, but I'm going to stay home. And that was amazing. It's still amazing. I still run with that. And at time, so my daughter was young. And then when she was 2, we had twins. So we had 3 girls. And every Friday, it was just me with them. And the thing that I didn't expect but absolutely happened is my team, my gritty team of pirates who like had not really done business before, they were all forced to grow up because they knew on Friday, like, I'm not reachable. And if you do, I was reachable. If there's some big problem, of course, I'll get on the phone. But if you do reach me and it's not for a good reason, I'm going to let you know that. Okay, this is what I would do. By the way, it's Friday. Like, why are you calling me for this? This doesn't, like, it feels like you could have just solved this yourself. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, yeah. So I protected that time. I actually found that time as like, I was quote unquote not working. But one of the things that CEOs are like supposed to do is think. But it's very hard to think when you're just bombarded with emails and like all this stuff all day long. My Fridays became my thinking day because when I'm like hanging out with my kids and like playing with Legos on the floor, I'm like, oh yeah, what about this? And yeah, I by no means, chapter 1 was the pirate year up until COVID. Pirate years, that was 5 years. Grew the business dramatically. Every year was like 2x, 3x just. And of course, I'd go and talk to venture people and they're like, if you raise capital, you might be able to go faster. And I'm like, dude, like I am going plenty fast. We're at like $250 million after 5 years. Like we're good. We don't need to go faster. Then COVID hits. We close our offices. Everyone goes home. And things were great for the first part of COVID. We were just signing people up hand over fist and like no marketing whatsoever. But then we started running out of meat and we had to go on a wait list and then inflation started picking up, especially in meat. Meat was one of those things where like people were dying in plants and it was just like we were at the epicenter of the COVID stuff. We layered on a bunch of people into the company. Because it was like, wow, we're like 450 million and we're 80 employees and we need more people around here. And so over the course of 3 years, we went from 80
And was
people.
that, when you say we, like in the CustomMade example, it was like the VCs and you were the little 26-year-old.
Yeah.
Who's the we in this case? Because
Yeah,
you blame it on
guess,
the VCs. You don't have any VCs
it's the
in the company,
It's
Mike.
the royal
yeah.
we. Ultimately, it was me and I had a guy who came in as a CFO. This guy, Tom, who then became my COO. He was like my number 2. So we were calling the shots. And then we had an executive team. So we were all calling the shots. But yes, ultimately it was me. And
Did you feel like, and was that, describe that feeling. Was it like the pirates need some supervision or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As I now understand it, this is a classic business cycle, piece of the business cycle, which is company scales very quickly. Company gets to around 500 million in revenue. Company decides that they have no idea what they're doing. Company brings in a lot of people to build processes and whatnot. Company slows down. Like that's
I could have told you that every company I've built that passed 500 million in revenue, that's what happened to us.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I've never done anything.
Yeah.
Just for any listener that thought I was serious.
Yeah. In our first company, we did that before we had product market fit. That was a mistake. In this company, I did it. And yes, I'm the one to blame. I did it probably at the right time. Like the reality was our website was crashing. We had been hacked. Like we just didn't have controls in place and we just needed better supervision and better people around us.
But you just like over-rotated to the controls?
Yeah. So there's this great book they talk about. It's called like The Cycles of Business. And they talk about how in the pirate stage, it's like capital letter E for entrepreneurship and lowercase p for process. And then you swing all the way over to like capital P process and lowercase e entrepreneurship. Like entrepreneurship is dead, right? It's like you want to get something approved, it's got to go through 5 layers of approvals before it ever sees the light of day. And the reality is that all the people we brought in are just doing their job. Like, right? We're like, hey, we have no idea what we're doing here. Help us out. And they're like, great, we'll hop in. And so that's like chapter 2 is 2021. You got inflationary pressures, you've got process, you've got like a whole bunch of stuff. And
what was the family chapter 2? Unless you want to do it.
No, geez. My twins were born in 2016. And yeah, I've been very present throughout. I didn't grow up with a dad, so I wanted to be like, I've said no. I want to be home. I want to be home for dinner. I want to be home on Fridays. I want to be there in the morning. It's very hard to pull me away. And when you're a CEO, especially if your company is reasonably successful, you could be gone every week. No problem. Like between the conference and the invites and the dinners and the, hey, you want to go to the Bruins game? And hey, do you want to go out to dinner? And hey, do you want to come to Austin and give this talk? And I imagine that can seem really flattering to a lot of people who then are like, yes. I realized, especially because of my first company, I said yes to everything. I realized the invites never stop, and I don't think it really helps the company.
I'm just saying, but you did say yes to this podcast.
Yeah, it's during the day, though. So I'm just like not doing work. I'm on the podcast. And with your reach, I'm just super excited to get in front of all your...
people to listen to this.
Yeah, get
someday,
in front of all those people.
Someday, this is going to be huge.
Buy ButcherBox, folks. Yeah, they'll go back to one of the first episodes, and they'll be like, huh. So I was home. I was present as a father. I worked on my health a lot more. I worked out a lot and like really took my...
This is like on the road to 500 million. This is what was happening?
Yeah. Like I just didn't let it take me over.
That's amazing.
And it all comes down to like that plan that, okay, what does my day look like? And I've rewritten that plan every 3 years. Like, here's the lifestyle plan I want now. And I will say that somewhere along the line, I took my eye off the ball.
I was going to ask, because you just said that you said that like slippery slope of like controls and like less and less entrepreneurship, less and less pirate, and then the company got in a bad place. And so if it were me, when the company gets to that bad place, like all my personal crap goes right out the window, and like, every bad personal habit is back full in effect, like over caffeinated, under rested, working around the clock, the road warrior,
barking at your spouse, the whole thing, yeah. So somewhere around there is when the wheels fell off everything at the same time. In retrospect, like I think, like you just said, over caffeinated, overstimulated, just trying to cope by doing whatever, not knowing how to make the next move at the company. Some of the early teams started leaving.
And don't answer any question if you don't want to, but did you have a CEO forum or some kind of outlet along the way?
Yes. Throughout my entire journey, yes.
And did you have to keep switching up the group as you entered different phases of the business so that you were around leaders of similar scale?
Yes, there's a group called EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization. The buy-in for EO, or like the requirement for EO, is $1 million in revenue. So I was in EO throughout my...
Did you have 500 memberships?
Yeah, exactly. I was in EO throughout my CustomMade journey, and then was in EO when we started ButcherBox. And then there's another group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization, that you have to be over 20 million. So as soon as I got to over 20 million, I joined that one. And that has all sorts of people. It has people who have retired, or people who are running like a $25 million thing, and people who are running like $1 billion thing, and it's everyone in between. But yeah, that group, I hold a lot of my success and gratitude for YPO, because you get together with a group of people. It's eight business leaders on a monthly basis. You talk about all your challenges and wins, and the idea is, if life is a bell curve of experiences, there are very few people who you can talk about the tails with. And this is a group that, like, that's the whole point, is like process the tails. So it really has nothing to do with business. It's not, like, how do I come up with an employee handbook? It has everything to do with, like, how do I show up at work, and like, how can I learn more about myself by my interactions?
And if things are getting funky at home and at work at the same time, as you're sorting through that, how do you know which one to give attention to? And are they interreliant, or are they separate and distinct?
Yeah. Okay. So I heard this analogy once, thought it was great. I've built on it, and it's kind of how I run my life. You know the circus act where they spin a plate on a broomstick? You like get a plate and you spin it on a broomstick, and the plate is spinning on a stick.
Okay.
And then once one plate is spinning, they grab another plate and they do the same thing, and that one's spinning. And then maybe the first one starts to wobble, so they go back and mess with the stick, and it starts to spin. And then they do another one, and then they do another one, and then they do another one. And all of a sudden on stage, there's 10 to 15 plates spinning all at once. And the job of the person who's doing the plate spinning is to know which one's wobbling, and to run over to it and jimmy it a few times so it starts spinning again. And so I think one of the problems of entrepreneurship, which is both a superpower as well as a problem, is when all the plates are spinning really nicely, we as entrepreneurs, or many entrepreneurs, are like, oh, everything's spinning. And instead of sitting back and being like, wow, isn't this so great? Everything's spinning. We go and grab another plate. We're like, we need a new initiative. We're like, I'm going to write a book or I'm going to do this. It's just like, it's a sickness. It's like, I got to start something else because everything is like working. And basically what I used to talk about was like, hey, the job of the entrepreneur is to know which plates are wobbling and to go attend to those plates. And so if your family life is wobbling or your kids need something and it's wobbling, recognize there's a wobble and go spend your time making sure that thing will start spinning again. What I've now come to realize is there are like in this analogy of plates, there are a few golden plates and you cannot let those wobble. You just can't let them wobble. So you always have to go back to attend to those plates. And those, in my opinion, are your health, your spouse or relationships, and your kids. Those are the ones that, like, I don't care if the reality is like, oh, our revenue's down. Who cares? If your health is wobbling, like, it doesn't matter. And the reality is if you, like, have a heart attack, you're not going to worry about your revenue. Like, you just aren't. You're going to worry about, like, survival. Or if your wife leaves you, or if your kids get sick, or all those challenges that happen, those are actually the most important things in life. Your connections, you could put your friends in there. I don't know if that's a golden plate or like all of that stuff is so much more important than your work life. The challenge is that we as entrepreneurs, we connect our ego to our work, which it works really well when it's going well. Like when it's growing, it's wow, I feel on top of the world. But that's a mistake because as soon as things go bad, you just start trying to like will yourself back to success and everything suffers as a result. And so I think that even with the best structures in a business that was started as a hobby and profitable growth and no investors, I too have taken my eye off the golden plates at times. And that's something that I just can't do anymore.
One question I have, and feel free to answer this in a ButcherBox specific way or just more general advice, but for founders who choose to take the independent path and are in a position where they could raise money and they consciously do not, how have you thought about and how much have you worried about what if this all goes to, because you mentioned, for example, that you're an advocate of secondaries in the venture market along the way. Typically it'd be take a little money off the table, get your head out of a vice, so if it all goes to zero, you won't be applying for unemployment. You'll have some flexibility to lick your wounds and recharge and figure out what to do next. What's the equivalent of that in the independent path? How much is too much? And just, how have you navigated that, and or what advice would you have for other founders who are trying to navigate that and committed to staying independent?
Yeah, so I think that you need to figure out how to enrich yourself along the way. And other shareholders, if you have any. We did not raise money, but we gave away shares to our employees. And so you have an early employee.
Was that in the form of stock options? Or?
Yeah. We started as an LLC, so they were something different. They were called profits interests, but same mechanics basically. But these people who helped start the company, it's 6 years in, and I just helped build a behemoth. I want some money. And it's, we got to figure out how to get you some money. When you build a company and it's profitable and you don't have outside investors, let's say you have a $10 million business and you made 10% profit. That's $1 million at the end of the year. I am not a believer in deploying all of that money back into the business. I think you should be trying to pull some out somehow. And so along the way, as we've been profitable, I have built ways in which I can pull out money. And so if the company was to like fail right now, and also when you don't have money, you do things in a more sustainable way. So we have a big cash position. We're very conservative. Yeah.
It's all going into crypto, right?
It's all in crypto. Yeah. My own coin, bacon. Just kidding. I don't have a coin. Yeah. So you have to basically don't plow everything back into the business, right? Like that just increases your risk. What you want to do is to pull some out and diversify.
So we talked about the golden plates on the personal side, and we talked about how things went Ari, if that's a word, A-W-R-Y, I think that's a word.
Awry.
Yeah, but with the business, right? But what did the professional getting healthy path look like, and where do things stand today?
On the professional side, so like I said, it is apparently a very classic business cycle to go into where it's lots of process, swing the pendulum too far, and the only way to bring it back is for the founder to be, or CEO, to be very involved in bringing that pendulum back to the founder mindset. And there's actually a great book called The Founder Mindset by these guys at Bain who studied this. And how do you bring back the founder mindset? Like, one, remind people about the customer and the customer's needs. Right. So it's sometimes there's too much process and we're just like stymieing the customer's experience and we think we're helping, but we're not. Two, just ramp up the sense of urgency. Like we're going to launch this at this time. And then three is just like really being clear about what you want. Right. I probably spent too long gossiping in the background about like, why is this taking so long? I don't understand. I don't know why we're, taking this approach, or why does this have to go through legal, or just like, instead of realizing, as you did quickly, like at the end of the day, this is your problem. So like, why don't you go say to people, I want this done by this date, or I need this accomplished, or I want you to not like look at this, or whatever those things are. Ultimately, I'm the guy in control. It's like retaking control. Last year, to end the growth, we went from 225 to 450 during COVID, and then 450 to 550, and then we went 550 to 570, and then last year we went down to 500. So we had a big drop. Or no, sorry, 2 years ago we went down to 500. Last year we grew again, and I'm hoping this year we'll be at our highest revenue ever. Hopefully we're out of the kind of the dip, right? We had one down year. We all felt bad about that. I felt bad about that, but we're back into growth mode and it's feeling good. And it feels different. And what it really took was me being intentional and realizing it's still my company and it hasn't been taken over. And this isn't like last time. And I get to call the shots and just doing it my way.
And what went on with the balance and being present in the gym and the meditation and I don't know if you said meditation, but like that whole side, did it take a back seat during this? Call it a turnaround because you
No.
said it was a big drop, but it was a little drop and you're still like effing huge. Yeah.
No.
A little hiccup, I would call it.
No, I think that it's actually the opposite. It's like I was spending a lot more time like obsessing over all the details, and instead of asking my team to obsess over those details for me. And that's the thing is like it actually is, it works so well with the way that I believe a company should be run, which is like you hire these executives and you pay them a bunch of money and like they don't want you breathing down their neck. You know what they want? They want to be left alone. So you just like, you be very clear with them about what you're looking for, in what time frame, why this matters to the customer, and then you just let them do their job. And so I actually recently have gotten rid of my regularly scheduled one-on-ones. I'm not meeting with people on a one-on-one basis unless they need me, and then I'm totally happy to meet with them. And I spend most of my time either getting the word out about doing a podcast, something like that, or people are coming to me with a problem. Not like they're coming to me because they have to meet with me every week, but they're coming to me because they really want my opinion on a certain thing. And so I'm loving my time. I'm loving what I'm doing. I don't feel like I'm overly involved or overly stretched, and I'm still home for dinner. I don't know. I probably have dinner out twice a month, maybe. And like once is with a friend, maybe once is with somebody from work. Very rare. I prefer to be home.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts on, for me, I feel like I'm a 0 to 1 pirate, and then I'm less of a business model person, and I'm more of put myself in the center of the action and get really well connected and uncover paths that are exciting and get to train on the tracks and get a bunch of interest and excitement around it. And then as soon as it starts getting operational, it's whoa, like that, like I'm not operational, and that's an energy suck, not an energy generator for me. And at one point early in my career, it was like, or in my founder career, it was like, I'm going to be the guy that like scales it bigger and bigger. And I don't know that I'm that guy. And you seemingly are that guy. Like, do you feel like that guy? Did you aspire to be that guy? And do you ever, like, how do you even think about that?
Yeah.
Do you worry you're not that guy?
Yeah. So I would encourage you to question where that's coming from. Like, where is this story that you're not the guy coming from? And it could be you're just not the guy. And you're like, hey, I'm very in tune with how I feel and I don't like it. In my case, I was working with a coach and I was like, when this thing gets to $1 million a month in revenue, so this is like year 1.5. When this thing gets to $1 million a month in revenue, I'm not the right guy. And he's like, why don't you set your sights a little higher? I was like, okay, fine. When this thing gets to 10 million a month, like I'm definitely not going to be the right guy. And then, so there's been all of these times where I'm like, I'm not the right guy. I'm not the right guy. I'm definitely not the right guy. Oh, now we're having trouble. I'm not the right guy. But none of it has to do with the business. Everything has to do with a deep sense of unworthiness within me. That's where it comes from. It doesn't come from like the business. But yeah, I won't be the guy forever. And I think most of the value in these things is created in the 0 to 1 anyway. So if you're like the 0 to 1 guy and you can just churn these out and have a team run it or do whatever, that could be a really compelling model. For me, I love, similar to you, I love being like in a small room with a bunch of people with a lot of grit. And I'm like the conductor of an orchestra. What are you working on? What are you doing? What about this? What about this? Just going down the line and just everybody's just doing, I can oversee everything. That's very different than a 200-person company where you might have, there are people at my company I've never talked to, but then what are they working on? No idea. So it's somebody who reports to somebody who reports to somebody who reports to me is telling them what to do. It's scary. It's different. And the question is, for me has been, how do I build the same experience? And for me, that's working with my executive team. So really using them as my team, like keeping my...
you've done what you're saying that I do, but the difference is that you just do it in a scaling business by just constantly putting the right team around you and then being really intentional about empowering them and staying out of the way, quote unquote, for them, but also for you, because you don't want to be all up in there.
Which is hard. Like sometimes my executives say, oh, we need to move on from this person. And I'm like, what? I really like what they're doing. I think that's a bad idea. And then I'm listening to myself. I'm like, all right, you say you don't want to be the center of attention. If you don't want to be the center of the universe, like you got to just like yield when they say things. But understanding my superpower, or like asking a question that I'm like, this is so obvious, but to them it's not, or pushing them in a different direction, or helping them think about something at a much bigger scale than they're thinking about. They still need me for that. It's not like they can just run themselves, but they don't need me to be like, hey, it's Monday morning. Like, how many people did we sign up? And can you give me a breakdown of like why we didn't or did sign up at more or less people than we wanted to? They don't need me for that. That's just like my own anxious energy coming out.
What do you worry about these days, Mike?
A few things. So I work in meat, as we talked about. I think that meat is a very interesting space to work in because transformation is so needed, and we see an increasing desire for meat that was raised better, the environment treated better, the farmer paid more, but it's a very entrenched industry. And one thing is meat is beginning to be politicized. It's like, we should be banning meat. There's a lot of that talk versus the right saying like, why is the left wanting to ban meat? Like, we need more meat. So anytime anything gets politicized, like I'm uneasy. There's also, with the new Trump administration, there's a question on like, what's next? Who knows? Would there be tariffs? We bring in some of our meat from Australia, our grass-fed beef. Would there be tariffs? It's hard to navigate in that space. I would say...
I don't want to take you off the rails from talking about what else worries you, but are you active at all in terms of government relations? Is that
we are, yeah. Do you
have a head of policy internally?
We don't have a head of policy, but we got very involved in the EATS Act, which is part of the Farm Bill. California and Massachusetts both passed provisions whereby eggs and pork in their states can only be raised to a certain standard. And the Farm Bill, first that got challenged by the Supreme Court, or at the Supreme Court by the pork industry. Then they now have provision in the Farm Bill to get rid of it. So we actually got about 35 other organizations to write a letter to talk about our support or our opposition of the EATS Act, and went and did lobbying and went door to door on Capitol Hill, which is super fun. So yeah, we've started to get involved politically. I also got involved in a question in Massachusetts, which had nothing to do with work, but that's been fun. It's been pretty interesting to be like, growing up, you're always like, oh, these companies are bad. They're intermingling with politics, and that's bad. And then you just realize and you choose issues that matter to you. Not necessarily that you even make money from, but that matter to you, and you go push hard and try to make a difference. We're now
so you're worried
trying to
about potential tariffs, and then what else are you worried about? You were about to say, and then I cut you off.
Yeah, that whole realm is, I think there's a really compelling, interesting movement right now, the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement. And there's a question, one of the things I'm worried about is Kennedy getting confirmed. Is he going to get confirmed? If he does get confirmed, how can we help shape a meat policy that will make some sense? And so that's like top of mind right now. And then I would say the current worry, it's the 10th of February. The current worry is, are we on plan for doing what we said we wanted to do? So we're only 6 weeks in, but like we're already starting to see signals. Seems like we are, but yeah, that's like the current thinking. And then, yeah, just balancing it all. It's just a constant rebalance and reformulation, and that's work. There's work to be done there.
So coming back around to where we started, so is AI still like a little sideshow, or do you feel like it's going to have impact in your business? How much are you thinking about it, and how influential do you think it will be over the next 3, 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I would say right now AI is a sideshow. We're a Microsoft environment, so we have Copilot for everybody, and there's definitely a whole bunch of writing, and it's review season right now. People are just putting stuff into Copilot to create reviews. That stuff's happening, but I see that as like making workers a little more efficient, which is obviously a big piece of AI, but that's happening, and I think that's pretty neat to watch. And then the main show would be, how do you deliver the customer a better experience based on their behavior so that they order and eat and don't leave? That's an area where AI can be very helpful. And so that's where we're spending a lot of our time, is like thinking about that and building that and working on that. And so if a customer is going to leave or wants to leave, or, that we're thinking about, how do we retain them? How do we help them get through whatever hump they're going through? Same with customer service.
Is it impacting at all? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, same with customer service. It's customer calls in to complain, delivering that customer service agent, what's a good way to solve this issue that you can do at scale and gets better and smarter over time is a huge opportunity.
And is it changing at all the quantity of hires, the profile of hires? Are you bringing new roles in? Are you working with outside firms? Like, where's the expertise coming from?
Mostly external firms. We do have some people internally who are just very fired up about AI and are constantly pushing the envelope, but we're very much a buy versus build organization that was rooted out of the start as a hobby business. And so we're just cobbling together best in class and just trying to build a system that works. And so that it's very on brand for us to go find a company to help with our AI versus doing it ourselves.
How far out do you think, dream, plan for ButcherBox? And in your wildest imagination, what does ButcherBox look like in the future?
I said I do these 3-year visions, and the last vision that I did, I sat down to write a 3-year vision, and I was like, you know what, like, this isn't the right way to look at the business. What this business needs is a 25-year vision or a 100-year vision, depending on how you want to look at it. So when you look at iconic food brands in the U.S., they tend to have something in common, which is they're closely held, family-controlled, and long-term holds. So if you think about like Hershey's or Campbell's or Mars or Tyson, they're all in the same vein. They have just been around for a very long time. Some of them are slightly public, but it's just like a piece of their overall capital structure, family controlled, and just like multi-generational holds. And so when I made that observation, we just started building towards a multi-generational play. It doesn't mean that somebody could come by and say, hey, here's a huge check, come by, we want to buy ButcherBox. We would obviously look at that. But I don't have any plans on going public. I don't have any plans on selling, and I don't have any plans on selling a piece to private equity. What I'm really interested in is building a big, enduring company. And why? It's two reasons. One, I think to build an iconic brand in this country, which the opportunity is to build an iconic brand in meat, a brand that people know and love in meat, which has not been done. That's going to take time. And the second is, I believe that meat needs to be transformed. I like to say that I agree with vegetarians. Meat is broken and it needs to be transformed. And the problem is that you have all of these companies that are private equity backed or publicly traded, and they're not going to make the change because they don't have enough time. And so what I love about where we sit as a company is we are able to take a long-term perspective. So the first 7 years, 7 years I was in this business, I'd go to the meat conference and look around the room and just be like, why does nobody care about worker welfare? It's like the whole industry. Like nobody cares about the worker in the plant and like how many injuries are people getting and are they allowed to take a break and vote and whatever else. Like, why does nobody care about this? And the reality is, after a while, after pointing all the fingers, I realized, oh, like we can do this. And so it's been a really fun experience to recognize that like you want people to go against the EATS Act, like that's us. Like we need to galvanize all these companies and all these brands. And you want to build something for worker welfare, that's you too. And so the only way that you can be crazy enough to sign up for something like that is if you have just a very long-term horizon, other than we need this done this quarter, because that's just not going to work. Yeah, so we're just going to be around for a long time. I don't know how long I'll run it. My current thinking is I'd love to run it to $1 billion in revenue. We'll see. Maybe that's just another Pyrrhic victory goal written on my board that when I cross it off, I won't feel any better about myself. But that's my current one is, it'd be cool if I could run it to $1 billion in revenue. That'd be pretty fun.
Mike, anything I didn't ask that you wish I did?
No, I don't think so. Maybe what type of customer do we have? I think the type of customer we have is the one listening to your podcast, somebody who cares deeply about themselves, about their environment, and is trying to make healthier choices at home. And we provide a box at a great value, and you don't have to go to the butcher shop or the grocery store to get it. Other than that, no, I'm super excited to watch your journey from afar.
Thanks. Yeah, and thanks for being a co-conspirator on that journey in general, but also in this chat. Definitely some food for thought, especially that part about the scaling leader thing. I think that gives me some good food for thought. The good news is that I have nothing to scale right now other than my public walkabout. But at some point, this public walkabout is going to lead to something to scale. And and so I think you'll hear from me again when I get to that crossroads.
Nice. Can't wait.
Yeah, and any call to action for listeners other than signing up for ButcherBox? Anyone you want to hear from? Anything you want them to think about that you haven't said already?
I don't think so. No, I think that's good. People can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Man, but huge congratulations to you on everything that you've built. I really respect how you've gone about building it, the humbleness that you bring even today, and also just how intentional you've been about balancing professional success with personal success and how transparent you are about how hard it is, right? Because it is super hard. None of us have the answer. We're all just doing the best we can. But I think hopefully people will find some value in just hearing that it's hard for everybody, not just for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But good luck. Keep it up and road to $1 billion.
Thank you.